So when Andrea asked me about this, I thought, well, let's see the best way to approach this. And I'm going to pretty much cover what will be out on the trail on each site. I figured that might be the best way for you to kind of get an understanding of what we deal with on our job. So without further ado, I'll hop off this really cool picture and go into why do I set up the trail the way it is. I like a hands-on approach, because the stuff I do at my job is pretty much hands-on. You know, it's like I have here. The test questions are designed to be hands-on, so I like the whole team to be involved in it. Because as you can tell, you might have one or two that are doing the work and the other one standing around going, this is really cool out here. But, you know, like I said, the questions pertain to the work done by rangeland specialists. So this is stuff I do in my job, and other guys, shouldn't say guys, but other people in a similar position statewide or nationwide do some of these. But some of the practices might change in region to region or state to state. So, but this is how we do it in North Dakota. So we have resource documents listed on the site, on the website, I'm sorry. Please go over some of those, because the material is taken out of there. And there should be a clipping video on there done by Kevin Sedovic. Kevin is the NDSU Extension Rangeland Specialist, and there's not anybody in the country better than Kevin. So if you watch what he's talking about and have any questions, feel free to reach out to Andrea and I can answer them for you as best I can. So on stop one, I'm basically looking at ecological sites, because ecological sites help me determine a lot of what's going on out there, because not all grazing sites are the same. I should say ecological sites. So I put students are expected to know how to figure out AUMs for different ecological sites. When an AUM is an animal unit month, that's what we use to figure out the grazing capacity for that site. And the AUM is based on a 1,000-pound animal. I mean, granted, we know they're bigger ones out there, like if you get a bull, or you've got some 1,500-1,600-pound cows out there. But as a general rule of thumb, we use a 1,000-pound animal. So that's how that equivalent is figured out. So as I said in a few seconds ago, each site has a different grazing value depending on the MLRA, which is a major land resource area. So what's in Stutsman County, we have two MLRAs that run through. We have 53B and 55A, and the grazing values change from that MLRA. So, and North Dakota has 11 of them. So when we're out there, the ecological sites in those MLRAs also carry different grazing values. That's why I think it's important that they look at this sheet and they look at this question, because you can't just throw them out there and think that you're going to get uniformity as you graze. And this is probably one of the most important things that I do out there when I'm figuring out grazing rotation for a producer. On the question, you'll have a lot of information given to you. I definitely look at the table that's given, because that has all the values that are on there. The formula is given. But I also stated before that it's important for the grazing site not to be grazed or mismanaged. And that's one of the big reasons we do this, because you start overgrazing, you get a lot of headaches. And as I said, here is a image of North Dakota MLRA sites. As you can see, here we've got Stutsman. I don't know, is my cursor working, Andrea? You can see anything coming through here. You can see in Stutsman, we've got 55B and 53B. And where Crystal Springs is at is roughly right, pretty much on the county line. So it's heavily into 53B. So all the values are taken off of that. I'm not trying to hide anything when I set that question up. They just need to know how to do that example. When I talked about multiple ecological sites, this is just in a given area. I would say this site is roughly maybe 360 acres, you know, and you can tell that you've already got 1, 2, 3, 4 different sites in that area. And each one of those sites carries different plant life and different plant densities. Down in the loamy overflow area, we're probably going to see heavier grass, heavier plant life. You get on the loamy, you're going to see a change, a shift in ecotone, as we would say, or plant life, and it might be a little bit light. And you get the shallow loamy up on top. It's going to be a lot thinner, a little more sparse. Try to slow down my speaking. I'm moving along pretty quick there. So the next stop would be range clipping. Why do we clip? I mean, it's other than it's fun to get out there with a big garden shear and just hack away at it. No. Clipping helps determine the amount of forage available per ecological site. So as you can see in the previous slide, I'm going to be clipping 1, 2, 3 sites so I can get an even balance. Because as a rule of thumb, what we have in the loamy in those 2 areas isn't going to change a whole lot. We're not looking at a drastic change unless something pops out that you can see if it had more moisture in that area or not. Otherwise, the production is going to be almost identical. But that's why we clip. So it helps determine the carrying capacity, which is the forage available. So on some of those sites, you could have 1,000 pounds per acre is what we're figuring when we do the weight, when we run this course. Some could have up to 6,000. I can show you a picture in a minute. But with the range clipping, please follow the instructions because it's very, very basic and simple. Everything's pretty much set up for them. You know, it's easy to get 1 or 2 students to clip and bag while the others fill out the clipping sheet, because once they fill out that sheet, everything falls into place after they get the weight from the bag. This is the image of the clipping sheet, and it's kind of small for what I'm saying. But if you can download it, I think we have the grass bundle on our site. Take a look at it and just go right, go all the way along and stop at M. You don't need to worry about N through Q. We stop at M. But this is one of our key things that we need when we go out there. When I go out there on each site, I'm taking 3 different clippings per ecological site. So when you saw, I'd be taking 9 different clippings. And I determine out of those 3, I average the weights and I get 1. I just want them to do 1 clipping so they have an idea of what we do and what it could be like. The clipping instructions are pretty, like I said, straightforward. Team name, the county, it all gets filled in there. You can pick ESD, would be loamy, and that's when you come over to the sheet way over here in column B where the arrow leads, and it'll show you LM. If I remember right, that should be, nope. There it is, LY, loamy. But here's one that'll get them confused, and I want to explain that now, is when they get to column J. It's the growth curve. You add the numbers because that gives you your percentage of growth at that time of year. So generally it's May. So you look at June, February, or January, February, March, April, and then May. So we would have 48 would be the percentage that they would put in there. They don't have to add them all. But that's when you come back to column J right here when they add it, and that turns into percentage. So if they've got 48, it becomes 0.48 if I remember correctly. This is what a clip site looks like. Or when I'm done, it's pretty much down to nothing. Here's the ring that they use. This ring, that number is already given for them. It's a factor. But when they clip it, to be accurate, they need to pull all the outside grass away from or outside the ring and clip just what's inside here. And it looks something like that. You have stuff laying over because that's grass that was outside the ring when I got done. This site, I got out there in early July, and it was very tall. It was about over waist high for me. And this one site ended up being about 6,000 pounds per acre of 6,000 pounds per acre of forage, which is good. But it just goes to show how much moisture we had and what really happened. But that's kind of what the clipping looks like. What they could do is pull the loose litter out. By watching the video that Kevin did, you'll see what I don't think he pulled out the litter. If you pull out the litter or not, it doesn't matter. It's just going to add a little weight to what they're doing. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So in the next site, the next stop, we have to go out at times with producers. They want to know what they have out there for consistency, because they may have to add other types of species. Most of us think that, we just go cattle out there. Some of them will add sheep or goats because they eat different types. As we all know, cattle basically go after grasses. Some shrubs, some forbs, but not as much. But if you throw sheep out there, they may go after the fringe sage. They'll go after the buckbrush. They'll eat a lot of the broadleaf plants that are out there. That's why it's important to know the difference between grasses, forbs, and shrubs. It also will help us determine the nutrient value of the pasture or site. So if I don't feel that site is not very nutrient dense, I won't recommend putting as many head on there as I would a site that has more adequate forage. And I might tell them you might want to cut back on your cattle and then invest in some sheep and put sheep out there to knock it back and bring the grasses back. It also lets you determine the wildlife load on that site, because we do take that into account in our agency, and most producers do care. But you look and you can tell them, there's different values for each one. Well, like an elk has the same value as a bull, 1.35 AUMs per acre. Whereas sheep, I think you can get 5 sheep per 1 cow. So, but then we also look at the forb content when we talk about sheep and goats, or we look at jackrabbits, or even coyotes running through there, or deer. I picked this one because this is something we do, and the students have been showing that they're a little confused on what they're actually supposed to be doing. And all I want them to do is, in this ring, there'll be a ring, 1 or 2 rings. I'll have to determine when I get out there what it looks like. All they have to do is count the forbs and shrubs. They don't have to determine species or anything right now. Just have an idea of what they're looking for and how it can impact the grazing site. Let's see. Like I say here, count forbs and shrubs, amount, not type. So you can, when they talk about that, just tell them they don't need to worry about species. They don't need to worry if it's alfalfa, if it's wormwood. It's just count if they have the number. On the last site, plant identification, which to me is extremely important. On that site, I will only use plants found in North Dakota. Students need to know the difference in plants, so they just need to know the name. Is it introduced? Is it native? Is it a grass or a forb? Warm season or cool season? Is it invasive or not? So invasive there's an invasive species list in North Dakota, and consists of, I think right now, 11 different species. And these are species that really have no known predator to keep them under control, and they just run rampant. So, and I know there are a lot of plants in North Dakota, and you kind of wonder, well, what are we looking for? I mainly try and keep it to cool seasons so they have an idea. what's out there. I do throw a shrub or two, and not a shrub, but a forb in there. It's a tough one because I feel it's important, but yet a lot of the students don't quite have the hands-on during the winter. There could be mounts that they could look at through NDSU. Talking to Kevin Sedovic or Sean DeKaiser out of NDSU, they might be able to put some mounts up and do a video of that. They could take a look at some of those to help. But when I look at plant identification, it also helps me understand the ecological sites. It'll let me know if that ecological site is suffering, if it's been overgrazed, if it hasn't been, if it's been undergrazed, or if it's been properly grazed. Because like I showed you earlier in the ecological site ones, there will be different plants on a shallow loamy, on a loamy, and a loamy overflow. Oh, I lost my train of thought. I apologize. Like I said, plant life varies in sites, also in ecological sites too. And this, by the way, is probably one of my favorite forbs out there. This is called a scarlet globe mallow. It's not very big, it's very showy. And you would think you'd find this in a very moist area, and you don't. You find it in a very shallow site or a thin loamy site. So in this image here, I took it. Plant identification also helps us identify increasing or decreasing or invasive plant species. Because I could just do a clipping and throw the weight out there and say, okay, go at it and have fun. Well, some of those plants, like this pretty flower here, this evening primrose, is on the decreasing side. There's also a forb out there called, or half shrub, actually called lead plant. Very palatable, but they decrease with grazing pressure. So if we get to that site, we definitely want to make sure that we try and cut back the numbers and maybe do some management in that area with that. That's why it's another reason we have plant identification. We go out there, we take a look around and see what are available out there. It gives me a better understanding of the site, if it can be grazed heavier or not, if it can handle what we recommend. As you can see, this plant right here is a silverleaf scurf pea, which is really cool, I think. It gets a purplish blue flower on it. This is fringe sage. Mule deer seem to like this one. It looks like there's a little bit of June grass and some green needle grass in there. It also gives me an understanding of nutrient value, because some of these plants, if you look at them, you wouldn't think there's any nutrient value to them, but there are. Like some people think, well, Canada thistle, it's a pain in the butt. It is, it's invasive, but the nutrient value of it is comparable to alfalfa, just like leafy spurge is. So if we can find out through plant identification and get them out there early enough, we can help sheep utilize those, because anything that's close to alfalfa in nutrient value is awesome. We can teach them to go after those. I'm hoping this makes a little bit of sense of why I picked some of these resources for the stops. And this pretty one right here is an endangered plant. This is the fringe prairie orchid, and you'll find it over in Cheyenne National Grasslands. So hopefully I didn't go too quickly. If you have any questions, just give me a holler, please.
Will there be a graph or a chart to determine nutrient values?
For what? I guess I could find something up, but I kind of went off a little bit deeper than I normally do for this. I mean, if there's something they want for that site for when they do the plant identification or the forb or shrub, I could put a chart out there that shows what the value is. I can find that, yes. Otherwise, I just want them to,
Let's see. Let me ask. Mark is scary.
instead of even talking to my kids.
Yeah. Let me see. Joanne, do you want to jump on and just ask your question? Did Mark answer that or no?
We were just kind of wondering because, you know, for the clippings, there's that part to help you determine the nutrient availability of your pasture. So when you do your clippings, so that's why we're kind of wondering if there's between the forbs, the grasses, and the shrubs, was there going to be testing on how to determine the nutrient value, or?
No, I'm just looking at final production. Look at M. It goes all the way across. You've got is that what you're wondering about? Because if you look at the
Yeah, that's what we were wondering about, is if they have to determine the nutrient value of what they clip.
no, they don't have to worry about that. I just want pounds of production.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Teresa was wondering, on the test, will we be graded on our final value?
Final value of what? The clipping?
Teresa, do you want to add more to that question?
Yeah, the final value of the clipping.
Yep. What I do is I look at the sheet, and if there's a mistake in there, that's, that'll happen. They might not get full pointage, but as long as I can see that they're actually following the process and doing it, I mean, it might be a math error somewhere. But generally, if they get it all right, they pretty much get the full points. But I like to see everything going across, because they won't hit the right number if they don't do it all the way. Does that make sense? Or did I just dance around the question?
Nope, you got it.
Because this one seems to be the one that stumps everybody, is the clipping. And I simplified it. I tried to simplify it anyway, and just made it, they get a lot of the values. So basically, the hardest part is the math after they do the clipping. Once they get the bag weight, it's just doing the math all the way across. And it shows them exactly everything up on top, underneath the letter A, B, C, D. It'll let you know total clipped weight, grams, bag weight. And if you look at the example underneath it, it kind of shows them how to get those numbers. So if they follow that, that's kind of a big help right there.
And we provide calculators, correct?
Yeah. Yes, we do.